Hello everybody, the date is February 24th, 2022. It's going to be a day that's going to go down in history because of the events that happened today in Ukraine. Praying for everybody in Ukraine. I think it's a very senseless act that Russia's doing, man, and hopefully this thing doesn't escalate any further. Hopefully no United States troops get involved, because right now my sister's overseas. She's a combat engineer, and she is actually in Romania. Scary as hell, man. I feel like my mom when I deployed back in 2006, watching the news just all day. Excuse me, non-stop, just looking for stuff to happen, like looking for anything, any good news, man, that the bombings have stopped and things like that. But anyway, let's get to the point, because it is still Black History Month in the year 2022. Now today's going to be kind of a short video because this group I'm going to talk about today is pretty much well known. I'm going to talk about some things that the average person may not know, but I'm doing this theme on the YouTube page for Black History Month, and to highlight the African American veterans that came before me. As a Cavalry Scout, I finally found my recon hat. I left it at my sister's house. But yeah, so this is to highlight all the African American veterans that came before me, man, who made it possible for me to serve in an army that was not segregated, which is crazy to even think about. So today we're going to be talking about the Tuskegee Airmen, also known as Red Tails, if you watch the movie Red Tails, and we'll get into that. Excuse me, why they are called Red Tails a little bit further down in the video. But first, let's talk about who were the Tuskegee Airmen and how did they become the Tuskegee Airmen? How did they get their name? Well, back in the 1940s, the military was segregated, and we were in, I believe that World War II was in its infancy. And pressure from the black press and the NAACP was coming down on the White House at this time. What's his name? I got it written down here. Roosevelt was president, and the military was segregated, and African Americans wanted to do more. However, nobody thought that African Americans had the mental capacity to fly airplanes. And that's something that is a recurring theme in this video. African Americans not getting a chance to fight on these front lines just because people thought we didn't have the intellectual capacity to do so. And just like in every video, it's a recurring theme. It was a recurring theme back then, and it's still a recurring theme today. That this color isn't smart enough to do anything that the people who don't have this color can do. Anyway, let's get down to it. President Roosevelt announced that he would be expanding the civilian pilot training program to include African Americans. Now, doesn't mean that they're going to be able to serve alongside Caucasians in the military. However, he was giving African Americans a chance to prove that they would be able to fly airplanes. And let me tell you something about flying. So during this playlist here, highlighting these African American veterans, I've talked about the Buffalo Soldiers, Cav Scouts, Recon, Go Cav. I've talked about the 761st Tank Battalion, which is also a Cav unit. You know, I've talked about. Oh man, I forget his name. So embarrassing. But the hero who fought on Pearl Harbor, and fighting on land, fighting on sea, it's easy because your Humvee gets shot, your tank gets shot, it's up armor, you know you're gonna be okay. But man, flying in a plane, in an aircraft, thousands of feet in the air, man, if you go down, if that ejection button don't work and you can't pop out of that cockpit, you go down with your plane. Very commendable. And if anything, you need more mental intellect to fly a plane than you do to drive a Humvee or a tank. Now, I know the Navy is pretty smart too. That's why That's why I joined the army. As a Cav Scout. He was a grunt doing the grunt work. But I loved every minute of it. But anyway, back to these heroes, Tuskegee Airmen, man. So there was something called the Tuskegee Experiment, and not to be confused with the experiment where they gave African Americans syphilis and all that crazy stuff that went down with that. This experiment was a training program at Tuskegee University in Alabama, where African American soldiers, they went to go train and see if they had what it takes to be pilots, shooting down German aircrafts in the war. And eventually they did. They proved that they were worthy of flying these aircrafts. However, the thing that made us, when I say us, African Americans, the thing that put us over the top, the stamped sign of approval, was Eleanor Roosevelt, President Roosevelt's wife, flew with, let me see here, I wrote it down, flew with Charles Anderson in April of 1941 to prove that African Americans were worthy of flying in war. Now think about that on two different fronts. These African Americans already had the mental intellect, they already had the capacity to fly these planes, right? First of all, we didn't get the chance to do so. And then they conducted an experiment to see if we had the mental intellect to do so. But the final stamp of approval was the president's wife had to fly with the pilot to get the go-ahead, to get the green light. Now, I don't think anybody took it there, but it took a older white lady to fly with an African American pilot to give them the stamp of approval to say, hey, we good to go. Not even after everything they went through in this program at Tuskegee University, not flying the planes, not getting passing marks from the instructors there. It took a white woman to fly with the pilot to say, okay, well, they good to go. It's almost like getting that stamp of approval by a white person. It trumped all the training that they went through, because them on their own, by their own merit, it wasn't enough. They had to fly with somebody Caucasian, even though it was the president's wife, which is, pretty high up there. It doesn't get any higher than that. They couldn't, their merits alone just wasn't enough. Anyway, so everybody moved on from Tuskegee University, and they formed the 99th Pursuit Squadron, and it was their job to escort bomber planes in World War II. Now, bomber planes, let's say, the only way that I can compare it, let's say that you have on the highway Mustangs escorting these big clunky SUVs. The planes that the Tuskegee Airmen flew, these P-51 aircrafts, they were lighter, they were faster, they were able to fly at a higher altitude, and they were able to maneuver and do all these tactical moves in the air that the bomber planes could not. And the bomber planes' essential mission was to bomb, disable supply routes, disable airfields, disable tanks, things of that nature, so that the Axis couldn't use them against us. Kind of like when I was in Iraq, being that lead scout, escorting the combat engineers through Iraq. Man, my sister's a combat engineer. I really hope those guys over there right now in Romania don't get sent in. That's just crazy. But back to the point. Everybody thought that these Tuskegee Airmen would fail. They thought that they wouldn't be able to fly missions. They thought that, hey, these men would lose a lot of men during battle, but then they proved in the air, fighting against the axis of evil, that they were worthy. Shot down multiple planes, disabled multiple supply routes, and just did what the hell we had the capacity to do the entire time. And the reason that they're called red tails is because the P-51s that they threw in the air, the tails of the aircraft were painted red. Hence the name Red Tails, like the movie Red Tails that came out a couple years ago. Well, not a couple years ago, it's like, I don't know, it's 2022, so the movie came out like 10, 12 years ago now. However, Gonna keep this video short, man, because a lot of people already know about the Tuskegee Airmen and what they do, or what they did, but more importantly, what they did for African American veterans such as myself. Great group, and I would say when it comes to mental intellect, I don't think after seeing African American soldiers fly these planes that require years of training, that our intellect should never be questioned again after that. However, it was, because, like I said, it's a recurring theme in Black history. First, you tell us that we can't do things because of the color of our skin, and then when some things were available to African Americans, you didn't want to give it to us because you didn't think we had the intellect to do it. And then when we proved we had the intellect to do it, you made laws and regulations and barriers so that we couldn't do it. It's crazy. Anyway, prayers out to Ukraine, man, and all the soldiers and all the parents right now worried about their kids enlisted in the military, no matter what branch. I hope this doesn't go any further than it did today. It's heartbreaking seeing this stuff on the news. And like I said, man, knowing that my sister, who watched me grow up, become a man in the Army, decided to graduate from high school. She tried college out for a couple months, and then she decided to go in. And now we in this mess. But it's, man, thanks to them, I was able to fight in a non-segregated Army. And thanks to that, my sister saw me grow up in a non-segregated Army. She saw me fight, earn a Purple Heart, and she still decided to sign up and go fight her country. Now she's in Europe, man, and hope to God nothing else happens. All right, that's it. I don't think I'm going to do any more videos. I was thinking about highlighting one person. I may still do that, but I have a really big speech I've been practicing. It's going to be a good one. Happy Black History Month, people. It's almost over, you know, because ironically, we get the shortest month of the year. But at least you get a month. But anyway, I'm out. Y'all have a good one.